right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Global Card Collectors. And today, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I'm in a car. We're in a car. It's basically come about because some of the interviews that I've done in the past without any of these clip-on mics have been a little bit problematic in terms of sound. It sounds like you're probably listening to somebody in the toilet talking to someone else. So we're trying the car. I've given a little bit of a practice run in lieu of buying some microphones, which are on the way. You know, let's say financial hurdles aside, once I can afford some, I'll definitely be buying some nice little microphones for in-person interviews. Anyway, I'm here with Tony. It's nice to see you again. I met Tony at the New Zealand National Card Show down in Wellington. And he had already been, I guess, a viewer of the channel and that kind of thing. Anyway, I had a little store there and we had a chat and we've been in touch ever since. Anyway, Tony, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And my first question, of course, as it is with many people, can you tell me a little bit about yourself as a collector? Like, what are you into? How did it all start? And what's it like being a collector?
Yeah, for me, well, started back in the 80s when I was a kid. Yeah, primary school, probably around about 7 or 8, seeing kids with cards at school and wondering what they were. And I vividly remember there was two. There was wrestling, so the WWF Superstars of Wrestling, which was big in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Or mid-80s, should I say. And then other cars like, you know, Garbage Gang cars, which just sort of blew my mind when I saw the artwork and the characters and, you know, the gross things that they were doing on the pictures. It's just, you probably remember, right? So,
yeah, of course.
So those kinds of things. And then there were other ones like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was a real popular cartoon, and G.I. Joe and those kinds of things. And those were all sorts of cards that I was seeing at school. There was even Batman Returns, this kind of thing as well. So it was probably more the non-sport cards, excluding the wrestling, that sort of got me into collecting cards back at that age. And it was a case of probably like most Kiwi kids, you know, they get a bit of pocket money from their parents. And the first thing they'll do is go down to the local dairy or wherever they could buy cards and spend it all on cards and chew on their gum and flick through what they've got and try and build a set and trade along the way. And, you know, myself, I wasn't into putting cards in sleeves or folders or keeping them well displayed. It was just slap a rubber band around them and stick them in your bag and swap them at school.
Yeah, cool.
So that's how it all started for me. And I think sort of early 90s, as I sort of, you know, left primary school and intermediate, and then basketball was really popular, and especially in the early to mid 90s with Jordan, the Bulls. That's when I got more involved with collecting basketball cards and that whole era of basketball. You know, I think that was, you know, a golden era for me being a young kid, seeing the likes of Jordan, you know, actually play games and being able to collect cards and so on as well. And we all had our favorite players. You know, a lot of us loved Jordan. You know, Shaq, he was a big guy, rookie, you know, coming in to play for the Magic. You know, there was Magic Johnson, you know, LA, there was rivalries. It was a special time. So yeah, that's sort of how I sort of transitioned from the non-sport into the sport. And I think kind of sort of mid 90s, as the basketball sort of died down, I sort of, I left sort of card collecting. I always had some stashed away in a few boxes. And I think sort of maybe when I was in my mid 20s, I sort of dug them out, looked through them, and then I started trying to complete some of the sets like the wrestling, the Garbage Gang, just to bring back the memories and join some groups and put some, you know, ads in newspapers. You know, this is before Facebook and all this kind of thing.
Wow.
So yeah, and then it brings us forward to today. And I still collect. I love to trade. I probably prefer to trade than sort of buy or what have you. I think that's still quite special. I like to keep the true sort of original art form of why we all started doing this and actually swapping cards and making deals. But you know, it's just blown up, especially when COVID came around and The Last Dance on Netflix. You know, everyone started getting all their card collections out of the basement and so on. So yeah, I love it. I still love it. Love the non-sport, love the sport, you know, love to see people doing breaks, this kind of stuff. So yeah.
And I think the New Zealand community is pretty into a lot of different collecting of cards. Like, there are so many different types of sets that Kiwis seem to collect. Like, and I guess with someone like you who has just a range of interests and I guess a little bit of nostalgia with it all as well, I guess it's easier for you to be able to find a lot of the things that you're still looking for from back in the 90s.
I think so. Yeah, Facebook. There's a lot of groups out there. Like, what a platform to be able to, collect and trade cards, right? And a whole bunch of other things as well. But I've done trades with collectors in the States, Australia, this kind of thing. And we wouldn't have been able to do this back in the 80s,
That's right.
as a kid. So it's a great platform, and I've met lots of people through card shows like yourself, through the groups, and built some good quality sort of I guess you could say trading or collector relationships with people. And it's always good to sort of keep an eye out for something or some sort of card that someone's looking for, and they're after it. So if you manage to pick it up, you can flick it on to them or point them in the right direction. So I guess to answer your question, it's not hard to find people that maybe know of someone or have something that you're after to try and complete a set or what have you. Yeah,
I think that point of community is quite important, and I've thought about this for a while. Actually, sometimes you'll find collectors who will be a little bit selfish, a little bit cutthroat, and everybody has their own way of collecting. But what I've noticed here that I'm really happy being able to do as a card collector is kind of lean on community, so that when, for example, there might be a card that I might be interested in, and somebody else will be like that, they might tag me in a Facebook post, they might contact me online and say, look, Will, there's this card that's for sale, would you like it? I think that essence of community is a big piece of why I've been so, I guess, active lately in the New Zealand card community, because I hadn't really found that in Turkey. Maybe there was a language barrier. I have like a couple of really close friends, like John, of course, the other host of the show. He and I are really good card friends, and we take care of one another in that sense, but we haven't really found this big community that will look after you. What I like about being a collector here is that you can find that, and at the same time, you'll be looking out for cards for your friends. So if, for example, I see a card that you might like about a hockey player, or there's a really good post, or there's a good listing online, I might just send you a message, and you can look for that, and you've done the same with me as well, which is awesome. What I wanted to ask you, and in fact, it's been the thing that I've been most excited about talking about ever since you agreed to come on the show, thanks again for that, is I think the international community has some really rare cards that seem to pop up out of nowhere. So there are two cards I can think of before I get to this card that you have. The first one, John has mentioned it. It's a Luka Modric card. From Croatia, really, really short print that people could find in Croatia. So it was when he was playing for Dinamo Zagreb. So finding those cards, it's like finding a needle in a haystack, and those are like his true rookie cards, and they go for big money. The second is a really strange one, and I happened to chance upon it, and I have it back in my collection in Turkey. It's another Luka. It's Luka Doncic. There's a Turkish rookie card of Luka Doncic, and it was when he was about 15 or 16 years old.
Wow. When
he was playing for Real Madrid. And so it's his first printed card by a card company. So those two cards I think are quite unique because, they're before the Paninis of this world, and they predate all of the so-called rookie cards from other countries. I could even think of another Turkish footballer, for example, Arda Güler. His first rookie card was printed by a Turkish card company, which have actually been on the show, Mythos. They printed his true rookie card as well. But New Zealand has a very unique story about a rookie card of someone that I think is a little bit, no one would think that his rookie card comes from here. Do you want to just tell us the story of this, who this person is, and how the rookie card came to be something from New Zealand?
Yeah. Well, WWF, Superstars of Wrestling, one of my favorite wrestlers, the Ultimate Warrior. And, to my understanding, Market Scene Limited, which is the company that brought out the wrestling cards that we're all familiar with in the 80s, the 3 series, is that is his rookie card. It's 1989. It's debatable, so, don't quote me on it, but that's my understanding is that's his rookie card, and that's in the 3rd series of Superstars of Wrestling, the Market Scene. So
yeah. So do you want to show it to us?
Yeah, let's open it up.
So I remember looking at these cards. I never had this really cool folder. I think one of our guests, Shannon, who also has this series, and talked about his time with Bushwhacker Butch. He said he won one from like getting it from the Star or something like that. And you ended up getting this in a trade, you said?
Yes.
So this is how they all came in, and you'll see. It's a pretty cool little folder that they all come in, and you told me earlier that you don't want to send them off to the grading companies. You'd rather just keep them in this folder as the way that they were intended. I love it. So obviously these are, I mean, we're not going to go through all of them, but just look at that first row of wrestlers. You've got Andre the Giant, Bret the Hitman Hart, Jake the Snake, and the Big Boss Man. If you're a 80s wrestling fan like I was, these guys are just their household names. They're really cool. And so each series came with, what, 20 cards? Was that right? Each series was just 20, or was there one with maybe 21?
I think it was 20, and then there's the checklist card on top of that. The directory card on top of that.
Yeah, and there's that Bushwhackers card that Shannon talked about earlier on. Demolition, of course. A lot of fun. Oh, Bad News Brown. Yeah, cool. I liked Bad News Brown. His finishing move was awesome. Anyway, the Ultimate Warrior card was in Series 3, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so in Series 3 in New Zealand, it was basically printed in 1989, as you've said. But what I found interesting was that there were no other Ultimate Warrior cards before that. Like, he'd been wrestling for a little while back then, so that's the card there. Look at that. That's a cool one too. Really like the red, and I like how they've basically taken the crowd out of the background. Pretty classic look. And these are the cards that you would buy for 30 cents, 50 cents at a day, or even 20 cents, I want to say.
I think there may have been 20 cents at some point. I remember around 40 cents for a pack of cards.
Yeah, it was pennies. And generally what would happen is when we'd go, like on a Sunday afternoon, my dad would take us in for ice cream and that sort of thing. And these cards would just be sitting in packets at the corner of the corner store. We call them dairies in New Zealand. And you would buy packets of these. And I remember having a boatload of this card. And right now on eBay, we looked up sold listings, and this one's going for roughly about $100 US, isn't it?
I think so. Like it does vary on condition.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably one of the most valuable cards out of these 3 series.
That's right. And obviously there are 2 others in this same set that are worth a decent chunk of money too, and that's the Macho King Randy Savage and Dusty Rhodes. This when they used to have a King of the Ring crown. Where, how did they get King of the Ring in wrestling? Was it a knockout thing like Royal Rumble, or was it someone just held the crown and then they had to beat them to get it?
I think that's how it was.
Yeah, I can't remember because there were a few. So there was Macho King. Was it King Haku? Haku had the crown
at one point. Yeah. Jim Duggan had it.
Yeah. I think you even have him with the crown on. Or is it? Do you have him with the crown on with Jim Duggan? Is that right? Yeah, there he is. Look, here's King Duggan. And I remember when he was the King of the Ring, I used to think it was ridiculous, but that was what entertainment was back then. That was these were our daily soap operas, you know. So a really cool set of cards. In fact, 3 series of cards from New Zealand. If you haven't checked out Shannon's episode, definitely listen to that again. He tells a lot of stories about these cards and what they're worth, but they're definitely worth checking out if you are into classic 80s and 90s wrestling cards, right?
For sure.
Yeah, and they look real great. Like, so Series 1 will be in this blue color here. Series 2 has got this pinkish color there. Look, there's Hulk Hogan. And then Series 3 is the red. So total, 60 cards, that's right, huh?
60 odd, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, these are definitely the talking point that I was most excited about talking about. So, yeah, thanks for sharing those. You want to go into a little bit more detail about any of the other cards that you brought along? Because you brought quite a range of cards to show us.
Yeah, I just brought just a handful just of what I like. Obviously the wrestling. I don't really collect new wrestling cards. It was more about sort of nostalgia for me with this one. But these are magazines from the 80s. Remember the WWF and
sure.
so on. I didn't bring any of those, but I thought I'd bring this. This will look quite familiar to some people from my generation, and I'll let you show that.
All right. So these are the Garbage Gang, and the Americans had a different version of that. And I think when cards started selling pretty big, are these the New Zealand version or just international?
New Zealand version. So,
because Regina, yeah, sure. So this was a New Zealand card making company.
Yeah, so they released 4 series in New Zealand. This is series 1. This red album was you could send in a wrapper from a pack wrapper, and I think you could send some money and get an album. So I think they did 3 albums, the red one, a yellow one, and a blue one. They did a calendar one year. But I would say the first series, which is this one here, and the 4th series are probably the most sought after, just because it's hard to find them in good condition. Especially the 4th series, it's just harder to find. It was sort of towards the end of when they were phasing out the Garbage Gang cards in New Zealand, and I think they did actually release a lot of prints of that, but I think a lot of them just either got biffed or disposed of. So these are nostalgic for me being a kid, so this is sort of why I got into these. And yeah, like I've got the 4 sets, but I've got a few upgrades that I'm working on as well. So
here's a question about these. So why the 2 names of the characters? So if you look, for example, there's Kim Kong and Anna Banana. So is there any reason why the 2 names? Did they ever say that? Because I remember seeing a different name on the same card with the same image, and I never understood why.
I think it's maybe a selling tactic, maybe so they could, you had the same image, but you get 2 cards out of the same image, and it allows you to have 2 names. Because I remember collecting these, a lot of kids would be trying to find the same name card after their name. So and I know it's how they did it in the USA. They release these cards all over the world. There's Japanese versions, there's Brazilian versions, there's obviously the US, Canada, Australia have the same size ones as these, but slightly different banners. So with the 2 cards, I think it was a real good marketing idea, because the artwork is quite detailed. So rather than have 80 different images for one set, they have 40 but have the 2 different names, the A cards and the B cards. So it was similar thing as well back in the 80s. I think these cards were about maybe 40 cents a pack. I think you had about 36 packs in a box, so for a box would probably cost you about $20.
Wow.
So
that was pre-NBA cards
back in the days. So
that's all pre-NBA, because cards were never that expensive until the NBA cards came into the picture, basically.
And I remember at school, these things were, banned. I'm sure
that's right.
Some people watching will remember, you weren't allowed to bring them to school. You had teachers take them off you. I'm sure a lot of disagreements in schoolyard, kids
that's
fighting
exactly
and arguing
what it
over
is.
what they swapped and it wasn't a fair deal and things like that. So, but it was all part of the fun, trying to collect and get the sets. So.
That's funny. I'm on the other side of the fence now, being a school teacher, and so it's funny because some of my students know that I'm a card collector. So last week, one of my boys brought in some of his Pokemon cards, and I showed him. I think there's an app called TCG Collector. I might be wrong about the name, but I was shown the app by some TCG collectors, and he started bragging about his card. Oh, it's worth so much money, and it's worth about $200, sir. I was like, $200, really? And so I opened up the app and I showed it to him, and it's like, yeah, that's $9. And he was like, oh, no, I was trying not to laugh, but I was like, that's all right. Like, at least now you know what the real market price for it is, rather than getting overexcited about a card that's rubbish. Anyway, he started scrolling through, and this is in my class time. But it was we'd just finished an assessment, so give them a bit of free time, Anyway, he's scanning this other card, and it pops up, and it's worth $200, and he's like, oh yes, I got a $200 card. And then one of his classmates comes up and goes, which card is that one? And he looks at it and goes, that's the one I traded with you. I was like, oh no. So this guy was one boy was completely heartbroken. The other one just felt like he was this savvy businessman who had made this big deal. It was amazing. I had a lot of fun kind of just watching that whole interaction play out, and the way that their body language was for the rest of the lesson. Yeah, one boy sitting very proudly, the other one was like, damn it. Damn it. He was so upset. It was a lot of fun. So I get why schools would definitely ban the cards. They're like, we don't want any drama with the kids. They can trade in their own time. It's got nothing to do with inappropriateness or anything like that. It's just the danger of trading when you're young, and some kids just getting completely taken to the cleaners.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
I think we all had that at some point, right?
That's right. Everybody's been there. been the let's say the fool in a trade one time or another, you know.
And that's what's so great about collecting now. You know, we can now have apps that can give us evaluation, you know, and it's been around for some years, you know, these apps. And you know, but I remember being a kid, it was Beckett magazine.
That's right.
And that's where you would get your valuations from, and that was sort of the source of truth. And now there's all these platforms. You've got things like eBay Sold, other
130 points.
Yeah. And so, you know,
Card ladder. Exactly
right. So, you know, if you're not sure, or if you get some cards in a trade and you're not too sure of what they are, you know, you can always have a look at these kinds of things. So, yeah.
What I find is interesting with New Zealand is that we do not like paying the price of a sold listing on eBay. You almost have to say if the US price is $100, that's all a New Zealander will pay. They don't want to do the exchange rate. Generally, a lot of them are like, I'm not paying that much money. It's too expensive. At least that's what I found. Not often, but a couple of times.
I agree. I think, you know, with the New Zealand exchange rate being much less than US dollar, it's like an extra hit, you know, on your pocket. So if you can afford to, and you really want that card or whatever it is that you're getting, by all means, go for it. But, you know, I've seen some of the listings in some of the groups, and, you know, people here are pretty good. You know, they'll try and work out a deal and so on as well. So, yeah, I think it's really good here. So, yeah.
So we are going to a hockey game pretty soon. Because you are a hockey card collector.
Yep.
And in fact, that's basically how we met, because you found me at the New Zealand National when I was selling the lot of hockey cards that I found. Do you want to show me some of the cards that
sure.
The hockey cards that you have?
Sure.
And tell me kind of, I guess, what style of player you collect, because it's more a style rather than an individual guy, right?
It is. I know a lot of collectors like to collect certain teams or players of that team, and for me, I would say I'm not a collector of like star players like your Ovechkins or what have you, or your Gretzky's or what have you. Like still love those players, but for me, I've always admired the enforcers. So the guys that all come out and protect the star players and drop the gloves and you know, have to answer the bell.
Nice.
So you know, some people have different views on these guys, that, you know, it's not needed in hockey and that they're just goons, but you know, in my opinion, they're protectors. They're like policemen, and they can really change the course of a game, and they can really calm things down if it gets out of control, and hold people accountable if there's a dirty hit or something along the lines of that.
You need that in a lot of different sports. Like obviously rugby, we have those sorts of guys too.
Of course.
I remember someone like Jerry Collins. You do not mess with him, mate.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, those sorts of players are pretty admirable in what they do. Like you said, they look after their playmakers, their star players, and they make sure that the opposition doesn't get into any funny business. And often they can turn the tide in the game too, you know?
They can.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Show us what you got.
Yeah, so this one here, this guy is called Tiger Williams, and he's been around since the 80s, 90s, I think even the 70s. So what I like about this guy is he holds the record for the most penalty minutes. I think it's around just over 4,000. So obviously he's retired now, he doesn't play anymore. I like to collect the autos of these players, because they're not sought after or, star players from a goal scoring point of view. These kinds of cards are not as costly, but I support these guys. So this here is an auto, it's a patch card, and he was around before my time, but I love watching that era of hockey as well. It was pretty wild back in the 70s and 80s, even into the 90s. It's sort of died out now. They're trying to remove that part of the game. I don't think they'll ever get rid of it, but it's definitely
they're toning it down a bit, I guess.
They're toning it down, and there's really not that need for these guys in the game anymore. But I still think that it is a part of the sport. So
yeah, when you look at these patches too, they're really they're game worn patches. But at the same time, if you look real close at that, you can see the stitching and everything. It's great. And sticker auto, but still, and low numbered, 6 of 15. And I just love the upper deck style of card, and that's the thing that I noticed when I bought the lot of cards, was just how nice looking upper deck cards are, and generally how good their quality control is of the cards that they do produce.
So I've got another one here. this player here, his name is Chris Simon, one of my favorite enforcers, and unfortunately he passed away this year, but this is an on-card auto, so fairly, I would say, common card. I think it's a Flair 96, 97.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's been signed, yeah, it's one that I like, and I'll keep this in my collection forever. So I think it's a really nice looking card, the way they've done it. They've got the player actually playing on the ice, and they've got like kind of a portrait shot. I think that series that they released that year was a really nice series.
Yeah.
And with the auto as well, being on cards. So, you know, a lot of these guys, they would do signings after games if they would come out, you know, for fans. Sometimes they would do signings at shows, but you can't really find every sort of enforcers sort of autos and things like this. So if there's something that you're after, you have to sort of dig around a bit.
Yeah, what I like about these flares as well, and there's obviously the basketball parallel of these two. I do like the portrait shot, and like you say, the action shot in front as well. The card quality as well is just so nice, like the glazing on it and everything like that. It's just, for a card that was not that expensive, it looks as good as the very high-end stuff of today. And that's what I liked about these cards. Then these were supposed high-end then, but you know, you're talking about maybe $10 a packet instead of $8 back then. You know what I mean? There was a jump. Maybe that number range is a little bit off, but it was still affordable, and you could buy one pack of these instead of two of others. As a kid, I was buying the two, but now I would definitely go for the quality of that. Yeah,
I've got a couple more here.
Sure.
I brought this one along because I wanted to show you something a little bit different. So
Sure.
This is scratching the ice, and this is, you know, it's a card. It's I think it's an on-card auto, and it looks like an ice rink, right, with the signature across it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, really unique. I hadn't seen them around, and I managed to pick this one up, and I just thought, wow, this is just so different, you know.
And what was this player like?
Yeah, he was sort of late 2000s. I don't think he played around for too long, but he was definitely a big guy, and you know, he did his job. So nice.
Yeah, I've noticed the hockey card community in New Zealand being part of that group, looking to try and sell the cards that I bought in that lot. They're a really close-knit group, and there's some really top shelf guys in that group. So I'm really happy to be part of that group as well. And you can just tell that they look out for one another, and they're really thoughtful, nice people. So it's been fun to get to know you guys, and the fact that everybody like celebrates when you get a really good card as well in that group is really fun.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's really good actually. Good group of guys in there. So I've met, you know, Dom and a few other guys. So at the card show. So yeah, really good group. Yeah, I'll just show you this one here. This is Crown Royal, and yeah, I just wanted to show that they did hockey cards, and even of the enforcers as well. So I think this is maybe sort of
2013, 2014.
Yeah, so it's a little bit older, about 10 odd years, but this is just one I picked up along the way as well. So
nice.
Yeah, I love the die cuts of these as well. I just think they're really nice looking cards.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Rob Ray,
Razor Ray, they called him.
Nice.
And I'll make this last one, shall we?
Yeah.
And this one here is what is this? All the King's Men, and this is George Paris. And
I love the mustache on this guy.
Yeah. You know, a lot of these guys were big, intimidating guys, so they were there to sort of, you know, set a tone during a game. So, yeah, a lot of them did their job. They didn't play a lot of ice time, but when they were on the ice, they made it known that they were there.
So, speaking of ice hockey, we're going to go to a game fairly shortly. How big is ice hockey in New Zealand, just for those people outside of the country who don't know?
Yeah, I'd say there's definitely a strong following, and you know, we've got a national hockey league in New Zealand. It's called the NZIHL, and I think there's around about 5 to 6 teams. There's 2 Auckland teams. There's the Southern Stampede. You've got the Canterbury Red Devils, and you've got even a Dunedin team, the Dunedin Thunder. So it's been around for some time. I think the early 2000s, maybe mid 2000s, from what I remember. And very strong following. These teams generally have, most of their roster is New Zealand players, but they do import players from Europe, US, Canada, and that helps bring up the level of hockey in New Zealand. So I think it's a great thing, and it gives those players an experience in New Zealand as well. So The short answer is I think it's very strong. For people within the community, they know how strong and how faithful the fans and the players are. But for someone that doesn't play, and I've often had conversations with people saying that I'm going to go catch a hockey game, and I've had people say, "Oh, what, ice hockey in New Zealand? Really? I didn't know that existed."
Yeah.
So there's definitely a strong following. Grateful that we've got 2 rinks in Auckland. We've got the Dunedin rink. Wellington now has a rink, so at some point they will have a team as well in the NZIHL. So yeah, and this is going to be your first game, right?
That's right, first time.
So it made sense, I was bringing along some cards, some hockey
perfect.
cards, so why not catch a hockey game?
That's right.
Hey, you never know, we might even see some of the rough stuff tonight. It's you never know.
So this is the final, right?
This is the semi-final, so
semi-final.
It's more of a crosstown rivalry. You've got the Botany Swarm versus the Auckland Admirals. So I'm an Admirals fan, but may the best team win. And the winner of the semis will face the Southern Stampede for the finals.
And will they have to go down to?
I believe they will. Yeah, they'll need to go to Queenstown. So I think they will get 1 game up here and 2 games in Queenstown, from what I recall. So,
Okay.
Yep. And that team is always a tough team to play, very good games. So
Makes sense. They're probably better on the ice in many ways because it's colder down the ice.
maybe. I spent a bit of time living in Queenstown growing up as a kid, and used to catch games down there, and I've been to that rink before, and the fans just go wild. They love that team.
Awesome.
And I think we're going to see a really good game tonight, so I'm quite looking forward to having you join me for your first hockey game.
Yeah,
so,
perfect, man.
Great.
I wanted to ask one more question because I did a little bit of reading up before we talked. Is it true that Rod Stewart and Rachel Hunter's kid, is it their kid who is a hockey player, or is it just Rachel Hunter's kid? I've heard that because they grew up in Canada, and then he came back and started playing in the NZIHL. Is that true?
I believe that's true. Now, I didn't follow that closely, but that's my understanding. That is both their son, and he came and I think he played a handful of games, maybe for the Southern Stampede at some point.
Wow.
Now, I don't recall his name, but I know that he did play for the UK at some point.
Wow.
Represented Great Britain. So,
Wow.
hey, look, that's a Kiwi connection to an international hockey player, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And it's I think she dated an NHL player at one point. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm sure if we jump on Google, we'd find some info.
I guess on top of that, like just the son of Rod Stewart and Rachel Hunter as well, like pretty well-known people back in the 80s, and to have their kid playing ice hockey in New Zealand professionally is pretty cool.
I consider it one of my favorite sports. Like I'm Kiwi, I love rugby, but I still think that hockey is one of the most skilled sports. To be able to skate, handle a puck with a stick and keep your head up, and score goals and pass the puck as well, and skate backwards and kind of be aware of everything that's going on around you at a fast pace. I just think it's it's one of the best sports in my opinion. I love watching hockey, and I love the community here in New Zealand, and I think a lot of families just think that if they had the opportunity to put their kids into hockey growing up, if there wasn't such huge cost to it, I think we'd probably see a bit more of it. But we've got some very good players that have come out of New Zealand to go and play semi-professional overseas. So
Cool.
yeah, it's a really good thing, and even it's not just for males. Some good female hockey players as well. They've gone and represented the country overseas. It's always growing, and it's good to see that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. It's going to be fun. So thanks for coming in and talking about your cards and showing us just a little piece of your collection.
Yep.
I really appreciate it. I like the variety. So we've got wrestling, Garbage Gang, and hockey cards. Is there anything you want to share with us before we go?
Just thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah,
and
it's been a pleasure.
it was great to meet you at the card show, and I can see you're very passionate about card collecting in general, and you always want to have a chat with anyone about any type of cards, whether it's the TCG, whether it's 90s basketball, whether it's the latest cards or what have you, or even Leaf, this kind of thing. And I remember being with you at the latest show, and that surprise that you got with that Leaf cards.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Just thanks for supporting this hobby and putting a platform out there for people to watch the videos. All the best with the channel. And
Thanks, man.
If there's anyone out there that wants to be on the show or wants to talk to Will about it, and you've got a collection, I definitely suggest get in touch with them.
Cool. Yeah, thanks a lot, buddy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Right after our interview was done, Tony took me to my first ever live ice hockey match. It was fun to see a game of ice hockey up close for the first time. It was the second semi-final between the West Auckland Admirals and the Botany Swarm, who both play in the NZ IHL ice hockey competition. As a total newbie to the world of ice hockey, the atmosphere at the rink took me by surprise. It wasn't the testosterone-filled aggression I half expected. Instead, there were families with young kids in winter coats cheering for the team. There was a definite energy to the game. The crowd was really into it, and they got really excited whenever something big happened. In the third period, there was a little bit of argy-bargy, which I kind of liked. You don't really get to see that in other sports these days. But before anything escalated too far, the refs intervened and sent both players to the penalty box. As a diehard sports fan, I was impressed by the sportsmanship displayed by both teams. I think it's something I really like about sports. So despite fiercely competing throughout a whole match, at the end, players are able to set aside their animosity, shake hands after the final whistle, and show respect to the people that they played against. See you on the next episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe.